Yay, my camera randomly started working again.
It's Friday.
Tim?
Hey.
Someone's excited.
I'm in the same city as Tim.
Sorry?
Said I'm in the same city as Tim. How could I not be excited?
And unfortunately, I'm not going to end up seeing you, it seems
I
like.
know. We see each other online all the time.
Yeah. All right.
I just figured you'd take me for an ultra marathon.
So folks are joining. I think we have the key set of folks that I definitely know I need to talk to a little bit here. So I'm going to get started. We have a half hour, a couple of important things to talk about. It is Friday, September 21st. I'm Tim Pepper, your 112 release lead. We are almost there. After the meeting, I will be uploading this video to YouTube, which is a way of saying it's recorded, so please behave in accordance with our community guidelines, as I know you will. Okay, so we are going to probably cut another RC today, but we need to discuss that a bit. Monday should be our last branch fast forward, and we'll thaw the branch at that point, get a little bit of final soak, and Thursday release. I think we're on a reasonable trajectory for that to be the case. So to get into some details, we don't have Cole here today, so I'm going to have to chase these down. The publishing bot appears to have broken today, so that'll need resolved next week. And then our first major issue. So we built debs and RPMs for the RC, which amazingly has never been done before, and this is a problem. We've got multiple things where we have the final release the way we do that, and all the other things are done slightly differently. So publishing those has highlighted a few issues that we're working through today. Caleb, I know you're multitasking, but if you do get around to removing those RC debs and RPMs as soon as possible today, that would be greatly appreciated.
I'm trying to figure out how this tool works right now for the removing part. It's not as easy as adding.
So this got highlighted because we actually have, I guess, I'm sorry, not KubeADM, KubeAnywhere testing that tripped on this. And there's a patch that's gone in for KubeAnywhere, so that test should go green, but this remains a problem because those packages are available to the world, and anybody who has automation that just looks trying to semi-regularly do an apt update or a DNF upgrade, they're going to see the new package name version release, and even though it says RC in the name, tools aren't necessarily going to notice that. So, yeah. Tim?
So our instructions from 111 onwards explicitly say to hold, but that doesn't mean people do it. So there is at least a clause in case somebody comes with pitchforks. There is documentation that says don't just randomly update and specifically set hold on these repositories, but it shouldn't be unstable, that's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, mea culpa. I was pushing for it. So
no, I think this is good, and we need to push to do this sort of stuff all the way through earlier in the cycle, that we have one release process, that we turn the crank, and that is the thing that we do for release and publish, and we do it from, I mean, maybe not the alpha since that's a weird one, but every single beta in RC is the same as an official release.
Right.
I would love to get to the point where we have testing and a nightly sort of repositories.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So we've got another issue open in release to work on this. The RPMs and debs are maybe a little bit awkward because those are still done by Googlers internally, but if we're going to decouple that, we may as well decouple it and do it in a way that solves this problem as well. So I'll be looking at that as the next month or so comes by.
I think an issue doesn't seem to be a sufficient way of tracking this kind of change. Like, it's a large change that needs more discussion and design, and I would like to use a more permanent tool there. Like, I think any of this work is, I think this work is large enough to have a cap associated with it. And how or whether we, as the release team, even continue to build our PMs in this way and debs, I think is important, because the people who are building the debs and RPMs are not the people who need to consume them. And so there's a mismatch in investment there that needs to be resolved.
Yeah, part of that, Caleb, is we don't even know what exactly is done today. So
Well,
Yeah, I think
there's no real magic. There's a small delta between the specs that are the checked into Kubernetes, and the ones that are in Kubernetes release. There's not a huge difference between building the debs yourself and having a Googler build the debs. It's just where they land up is ACL protected.
So we can carry this on in SIG release and figure it out. I think the short-term issue of, as the things get decoupled for that particular point in the build, I think we could resolve that quicker, but there is definitely a need for a larger cap on what the overall properly architected release engineering process looks like, capturing the stakeholders and the artifacts and managing their life cycles.
Could this be a part of your other working group stuff, Dims?
yeah, it's got to be at least the ACL parts and finding a home for it in the Google infrastructure and the CNCF infrastructure. Yes, that part needs to be in that group, but then SIG release itself should ask for what exactly they will need, so we can turn around and go make that happen in the other group. So it's like we need to kind of like, this is what we have, and this needs to be moved to the CNCF side. So we kind of need to document that, I guess. What's the name of the project that needs to be, the ACLs needs to be changed. And we were also talking about the stable versus testing versus nightly. So that would be an addition. So we need to kind of like ask for resources. That's what the other group can provide.
So not to detract or anything from the discussion, but like, let's take this to SIG release next week and hammer it out.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping in there, Hans.
Okay, so remaining issues then in terms of where we stand relative to release readiness. So there's a couple of things that have just flown by around kubeadm and upgrade and the previously mentioned kube anywhere change. So I think things are looking good there. I'm not aware of anything else that would be pending. So the one remaining issue, we literally have one issue that I'm looking at right now. So issue 68899, and then there's also a related 68857. This was a daemon set upgrade issue. Now, this may or may not be a broader problem. There's still a bunch of looking going on, and I need to pull people this morning again, or later this morning, to see what the outcome is looking like. But this is our old friend node taints by condition that has cropped up multiple times. Now, depending on how you look at this could be a minor issue. It's just the cluster directory, deprecated cluster up stuff. But depending on the analysis and who actually uses those scripts, if it's only the test that we run for GCE in the release process, okay, fine. Something is accidentally getting run on master that shouldn't at times. Not a big deal. I wouldn't even block on that probably. But we've never quite understood who uses those scripts, or maybe who has been influenced by those scripts, and whether there's other layers of problems potentially out there. So I need a little more guidance on that one from the SIGs.
We use those scripts, to the best of my knowledge, to turn GCE into GKE. Mm-hmm. But that's not a process that you should worry about as the OSS release manager.
The particular symptom there, we know that GKE does some additional labeling that should ensure that things are okay there. So this shouldn't hit in GKE.
Yeah, it's not going to be manifested immediately, regardless.
Yeah, and it won't at all based on the diagnosis so far, what we understand. But that doesn't mean that somebody else might not have an issue. That said, one of the things here went in 1.6 and has been documented, and people, like the ecosystem seems to understand this need. So people have been kind of surprised, like, how did this actually get through? And we don't quite understand why we weren't just failing all over the place and a bunch of GCE tests are having flakes. So it may be that this fix actually resolves some flakes as well, which would be nice. But so I'm inclined to not block on this, but I want just a little more diagnosis from the SIGs. And then that's the last thing pending. So our release is looking good. Anybody have anything that they're worried about in there? Gwen?
Not worried. Sorry, still got that cold. Not worried. Those GKE test flakes are still an open issue. We have 0 PRs open at this point, which is awesome. So it sounds like they all got in. Those GKE failures, I was just kind of wondering on their general status because they're sort of hidden.
Yeah, it sounds like folks are working on those, and definitely not a release blocker for us. But
Great.
I want us to partly have the culture that even though it's not release blocking and it's sort of this other thing, GKE, it's really important because so many of our tests are run in variations that are there that we as a release team kind of end up depending on the signal from there. And when we have a bunch of separate things that kind of overlap to give us a sense of the signal, but they're all flaky, it's really hard to discern where we are.
Yes. Ultimately, the fix for that is to make those tests public, right? I mean,
Barney, if you're trying to talk, your mic seems like it's just giving all static to us.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear
We
me?
hear you now.
All
Maybe.
right, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I feel like a parent who's been pulled to the principal's office because a child is misbehaving. All right. So I do realize the importance of the CI signal. I'm thinking I'll make a proposal internally, try to figure out how we can tighten it. Like maybe run the OSS mainline test before making changes internally, or whatever makes sense from a process point of view. But the kind of changes we do are on the hosting side are necessary for us to maintain the product, but we just need to ensure that it's not affecting this. So the change that happened last week to was essentially changing the permissions, reaching out the production to test boundary, and that was kind of a widely affecting change, luckily, so that it was resolved faster. But we, I can only say, yeah, we do realize the importance of this. We'll try to figure out a process wherein the impact for OSS release is minimal.
Yeah, something for an additional layer of acceptance test there could be useful to us if you were willing to take that on. And also, I really appreciate, I don't want you to feel like you're being called to the principal's office here. I really appreciate all you've done for us this last week.
Sure.
I know you put in some late nights as well. So the other thing I think that'll be useful here is as we get more of the monolith splitting and are figuring out how to manage that diaspora, and if we get other providers and other vendors who are doing their own consumption of master to be tracking master earlier and be feeding their results up in, and then we'll have a little bit more. It's still going to be complex. Like if we change something in master and only a portion of those providers' results feed back into us saying there was a problem, like we'll have to triage to figure out whether it was us or them, whether they need to change to fix something or we need to change or what. But ideally, we're never breaking them if we're doing things properly from a stability standpoint, but that is also hard. So this is going to be a work in progress, and I think it's going to be one of the major issues for like 2019, how we actually get code flowing out to sufficient usage and results coming back.
The one thing I think that was frustrating from my vantage point with the GKE failures and the GCE failures was that, and this might just be a me problem, but I had this, I knew sort of who I could talk to that could talk to somebody else, but two things. Number one, I always felt like I was asking a favor and bugging somebody. And number two, I actually didn't know what happened after that. And I had to bug that first person again. And most of the time that was Aish, which, I mean, again, I assume that everyone is super approachable and friendly and all that, but it also creates a personal burden on individuals. So either we have to reduce that burden somehow, or we have to make an official, like, this is the GKE test liaison role. Maybe not an official release team role, but somebody to talk to that will then have as part of their duties, not like, oh, wow, it's 10 p.m. and I'm just here and somebody's got to do it. But no, someone who can do that on their own, on the job time, to really follow up on those things. And also some sort of template for the report back. Because there's probably good reasons why this is hidden, but follow through and transparency as much as possible would just help so much.
Yeah, and this is beyond just Google. I think for any particular issue, if somebody says like, hey, we'll have this fixed this week, and then that's the last we hear of them for 2 weeks, you gotta have.
You'll always get some of that. The reason I
Yeah.
bring it up in this example is because it's kind of systemic.
Yeah. So I dropped it for the GCE GKE specific part. I dropped that in the retro doc just now, just to the idea of having a specific point of contact and a little bit of a template and expectations. This isn't going to be an SLA exactly, but to formalize it a little bit so that we have a little more sense of, especially from the CI signal perspective, like if we're watching it and it goes green, well, is that when the change actually merged on their side or not?
That actually
interlock.
That actually ties me into one of the last issues questions that I have. I have issue number 68260. And it was one of the issues that was fixed together with another issue. Mm-hmm. But I actually haven't heard back on whether the original content of that issue was fixed. I can follow up with the SIG. That's fine, but I don't understand the last comment on that issue. And so I just want to make sure that I'm not closing something that hasn't been fixed.
I've been assuming that is fixed based on the status of things, but
I don't have enough knowledge of the context to verify that.
I'll look at it offline. I just reached off with it. I'll take a look at it and put some comments on the issue.
Great. If you could just, I don't know, ping me on Slack or something, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Right.
All right, then. Where's my agenda doc? Okay, so the Golang change had gone in also, and we haven't seen anything unexpected there. Still want to watch that space a little bit just for the having scalability had a little more time to have their tests run to completion for a period. So kind of leaving that on the agenda till Monday just to keep watching in case anything cropped up there. I think that's it for issues and PRs then. Zach, anything we need to do for docs?
So there's 2 processes left. One, merge the final PR, which Jen Rondeau has willingly volunteered herself to do. And then the last thing is to generate the docs, all of the stuff like the kubelet and kube control and all of the auto-generated stuff, and then smash that into the branch, and then we're done.
Zach, I had one question here. I saw a note on the CoreOS ones that we reverted saying the material is still useful, even if all we did was revert a PR that was GKE related in a specific scripts. So we are not really reverting the fact that, CoreOS is GA, but all we are, switching back is the GCE ones. So maybe we. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that'll be Nick more on release notes.
No, not
it's in the actual docs.
Actual docs. We reverted a bunch of CoreOS docs saying that we are going
Core DNS, right?
Core DNS. Sorry.
Okay, just making sure.
Sorry. Yeah, I keep switching. Sorry about that.
Yours perked up when I heard CoreOS.
Yeah.
You mean the Red Hat docs? No, I'm kidding. So, yes, I did revert those PRs. Are you saying now it would be nice to have them in? The reason I reverted them is because they had a lot of information about how Core DNS is the default, and as far as I understood it is not.
It is the default in KubeADM. So it is the default in KubeADM.
Okay.
It is marked GA. So all we are saying in the release notes is that if you have more than 1,000 nodes, then there is things that you need to take care of. And we reverted a patch which was specific to GKE, which had nothing to do with the actual KubeADM or the rest of the
Gotcha. So I need to unrevert my revert.
Yeah, I think so.
Are we concerned that any of the language in the Core DNS docs would make someone assume that Core DNS is default across the entire project and not just
it is the default right now, whether we like it or not.
Well, no, it is for KubeADM, right?
Yes.
But I don't know if it is for COPS or if it is for EKS or AKS or all the other KSs that are out there these days.
Right, but that we are not worried about that here. I think.
I really think the original feature was misnamed back in July. This should have been a feature saying change Core DNS to the default in the Google environment.
Right. So as long as the docs are talking about when you're using Core DNS, this is what is applicable to you, then we are good. We should let it in.
Yeah. So there are actually two separate features for Core DNS. One is to bring Core DNS to GA, which I think is now closed, and the second one, which I opened for about making Core DNS the default, because that didn't exist before. I didn't think we have good documentation around changes like this specifically.
And those type of changes there isn't just one place where it becomes the default. There's a lot of different places, and some of those have already happened even in the previous release. So this is a very fuzzy space in terms of how we declare things.
How about we
default?
Yeah. How about we revisit that revert, and just to make sure that it's not talking about.
I've just pulled up all of them as well. So I will drop a link into the agenda, and there's I think there's 3 commits. Dims, if you could glance and give them a read through, and I guess Stephen as well, just to make sure that we think that the wording is correct.
Okay.
Yep. Sounds good.
Sounds good. We can do it on Slack.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I can do whatever you want. Any magic, I believe, is possible as long as it's trackable in Git.
This will be. Okay, that transitions in probably nicely over to release notes, Nick.
I didn't find the mute button. Yeah, so we are in good shape. We finally have what for us is sort of the it's not final. It's the final version of the document that we will then now turn into the final document. So we will begin our last copy editing, and any major themes that aren't in there, we will make a call on whether there seem to be any, and if there aren't, then we'll just pull it out. We will also go ahead and transfer in any known issues as we go along. But we need to make a call on when this document will be transferred back into GitHub. Obviously, we need to coordinate that with the actual release build. But for now, we're in good shape.
So my expectation is that on Monday we'll be thawing master, and at that point, if we pull this in and get it onto the 112 release branch, that branch shouldn't have anything else coming into it and should be ready ahead of release.
Okay,
So
excellent.
we could look at doing that Tuesday or something, or Wednesday. I mean, depending on when you all are ready.
Right. Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
And then comms. Anything we need to talk about?
Hey Tim, Kristen's here.
Okay.
No, I think we're set. I have both you and Steven's availability, and I'm sure your calendars are blowing up, so I'm starting to get you on some briefings. And it looks like the blog is in pretty good shape, so I think we should be okay with for now.
All right. And I think that then is the so one other thing that yeah, go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, so there was an Azure. I forgot to mention it during the PR part, but there was an Azure PR that slipped in yesterday or earlier this morning, I guess is the correct term. It looked serious enough for me to be fine with it. Let me link it. Here in the chat. Let me put it in the doc.
I'm inclined to think that that's fine. It's isolated to their code as well. They're the subject matter experts, and that's normal for code freeze, fixing what their SIG believes is a critical urgent bug. So yeah, there have been a couple of things. I haven't brought each and every single thing that's come by, but yeah, there have been a few things merging. But hopefully, we're not seeing any more of those. And on Monday, Tuesday, we'll need to be watching and see who's done what over the weekend.
Got it.
So one question then. We had talked about cutting an RC DIMS today, but is there value in doing that if we're not going to build the RPMs and DEBs as well? And I don't think we should build them given what we understand right now.
We should build them, but we shouldn't post them to the same spots.
We should not build them, I don't believe. The kubeadm does not actually need them. It just needs the kubelet and kubectl installed. So there's not actually, from my point of view, a good reason to actually build and publish the RC RPMs, at least from Kubernetes release. They're not actually.
The whole purpose of publishing it, I mean, we need to get to a point where if it was pushed into unstable, that'd be a useful thing for consumers, because we don't want people like me being the only people testing this stuff, because I have a totally hijacked weird build that no one else should do, right? Ideally, we have the same artifacts that we were going to publish in 1 week, but publish to an unstable repository that they can use to actually test the cluster before 12 is cut.
Right, but that does not work for RPMs. So rather than having two processes, I think it's best to we can put RPMs and DEBs for RCs someplace, but there's no good reason to have a Googler involved using the build process that will put them in the repositories where everything else goes.
Well,
so
I'm just saying if we have two repositories, which apparently do, and I didn't know that. I thought we had stable.
Well, we do for DEBs only. They're not for RPMs. So we'd have to break support there, which I'm also not super interested in doing.
So one point here, Caleb, when we did the RC ones, people actually tried it, and we actually fixed a few things that were broken in RC. And we have scripts that install the kubelet from deb, and then kubelet and kubectl, and then run the kubeadm on a fresh virtual machine and things like that.
But they need not, I guess is my point. So we can update the scripts to just use the static binaries. Like there's not a huge difference. In fact, we also don't necessarily. So we also have some Ubuntu support that The actual use of debs or RPMs, I don't think is necessary, especially since all we're doing with them is untarring.
If we're going to build them, we need to test them. And
yeah, and I would rather.
But I think this is a bigger problem than we're going to solve this week.
Yeah, I agree.
If we build the RC today, are we going to get useful information from that? And if we build the RPMs, given what we know about how they publish today, that's problematic. So I don't think we should build them today. In which case, are we going to get any additional useful information by doing an RC2 today?
Okay. So we built RC1 and there was a problem.
That was a good exercise.
Right. And we had a problem and we found and we fixed it. So we need to build an RC2. I'm not saying that they should be published exactly where RC1 was published. And they should reflect whatever we build as deb and RPMs should be built from the same wherever repository that we're picking up the specs from. So people don't have to use binaries or build from the specs in the KK repository.
Well, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that, at least the way I see the debs and RPMs, it's the difference between using, it's a packaging difference. Like there's not a material difference between using the static binaries or using the debs and RPMs. It's the difference between a zip file and a tar GZ.
I get that. I get that, Caleb.
But since today we build debs and RPM and people do use them, we do need to understand whether we're breaking those people or not.
Well, but they shouldn't be broken by the creation of the debs and RPMs themselves, because they're not materially different than using the static binaries.
So we found people picked up the beta and RC, and we fixed at least 2 bugs, one from beta 1 and one from RC1.
Right, but my question is,
because we published them somewhere. So
right,
let's please do that.
Well, my question is, would we have been able to find these problems had they just been using the static binaries? So if
the
there
answer is yes, but people don't do that, right, Caleb?
Right, but we could actually make it easier if we published. I mean, we can take this offline, but there's like lots of ways to make it easy to have an OS image that has the required static binaries when you start. I think that it would be actually better.
It's more than static binaries, though. You need the systemd unit files for these things.
Right, but that's also checked in to source. So what I'm saying is that if there were simply OS images that included the results of installing the debs or RPMs anyway, that would I could imagine that being an easier path than
it's not like you have the CNI, right. You bundle CNI, there's a bunch of binaries that you install. It's not just Kubernetes and KubeADM.
Yes, right now it's 4 debs, 6 debs right now. CRI tools, KubeADM, kubectl. So all we do, the script that I have pulls those 6 debs and does dpackage minus I. That's it.
Right, but
and that's easy. Yes, there are many ways to do other things, but then this is easier for people to follow. And we already told people to do that once for RC1. So at least for this time, let's publish it somewhere else for RC2. And when it comes to 113, we can go explore other variations.
So, hey, I don't want to be that guy again, but I think we're getting off of the release.
So we can decide whether we're going to build an RC today and RPMs and debs, and if so, where we publish them. One thing that I'm not sure about from the automation perspective here is it phased like some of the other things? Do we have a separate build from publish phasing, and can we control where these come from, or is this going to have to be a completely separate path where some of us just build the packages ourselves and test them ourselves without having done the official build step?
There's no place to put them today. So if I build them, there's no place for me to put those RPMs.
Okay, how about I find a place for that, Caleb?
Well, I mean, there's no, if you find a place, there's no reason for me to build the RPMs, I guess is what I'm saying. So, because the way that I build and publish them, they go to the official location. There's no easy way for me to change that because that's how this tooling is designed. And it's internal tooling that's designed to do just this particular thing. But I'm very sensitive to the user issues of having an easy process for kicking the tires with a pre-release version of Kubernetes. I just don't think that the deb RPM process is the right one to realize the actual value that we're trying to provide to the users. So I would love to talk about that in a SIG release meeting or in the mailing list, but I can imagine a much easier process that we can be totally community, more or less entirely community driven, that doesn't involve debs and RPMs, but still provides the same user value of being able to quickly spin up a cluster because everything's already installed for you.
Tim, can you put this up on the agenda for Tuesday?
Yeah, I can do that. So, well, just to
one thing
recap.
that I would like to try to do at least, though, if we're going to pursue this, then I would like still, if it's possible, and Mehdi seemed open to giving it a try, to doing a build that doesn't publish, even if that's from a hacked script temporarily, and hand me the RPMs, and I want to compare them in Diffoscope with an RPM that I build. And if we truly believe that it doesn't matter where they're built, let's prove that they're the same. Because I really doubt we have reproducible builds to that extent right now.
Oh, I can tell you right now that it doesn't matter where you build them.
Right.
The step of the script that is building the RPM is only using the release scripts, nothing internal. The step that publish them is internal, but the step that build the RPMs is completely from the release repo.
Right, they're not reproducible at the moment due to some other challenges. Though there's also the only possible way that they would be different is if and when the specs diverge that are in Kubernetes and Kubernetes release. This is the only source of difference between me building or Mehdi building and someone outside of Google building.
Okay.
So those files also should never have changed, and we should probably just remove the ones in Kubernetes release to make that not possible.
Right. So do we have instructions on building the, is there a make command for the RPMs?
You can build, yeah, you build them with Bazel.
Okay.
You mean building RPMs?
Yeah. And
okay, yeah, I don't do that with Bazel. And Kale, if you do it with Bazel, I'm doing it the other way. But I can give you the scripts. That's fine. That the command is just one command. You change the spec to the right version and just run make, I guess.
Yeah, the specs are you can consume them with Bazel. The only the problem there is with cross build. So if you're building x86-64, you're fine to use Bazel. And it's actually the only reason why this all hasn't or can't move immediately into Bazel now, because Seago lulls.
Right. So just tell us how you build Mehdi, and we'll see if we can recreate and compare. How's that? And let's not publish anything because we've caused enough chaos for 112.
Sorry, I was late to the release meeting. So is the ones that we already published as undone or not?
Caleb was trying to, yeah.
I'm undoing them. They should be done for RPMs. I'm doing them for debs now.
Okay. Let's catch up after the meeting.
Yeah, we'll sync up. Yeah.
Okay. So is there then any value in building the RC2 today?
I think we should publish an RC2 for people.
I'm fine with doing it.
We do RPM, so we decided we are not going to do RPMs and debs. So let's at least do RC2.
I think we get useful information from that potentially, and especially with that Go change that's gone through, if we do put that out there and somebody happens to use it in the next days, that could be useful information. Right. Okay, so.
The main reason is that'll make sure that we are doing the fast forward, and it'll make sure that we have green signal over the weekend for the fast forwarded branch.
Yeah, we would have done a fast forward anyway, but yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so we'll do a fast forward in the next, probably early this afternoon, because some things have merged this morning. I want to see their CI, but we'll do a fast forward this afternoon and do a RC2, but no RPMs and debs. And we will regroup on Monday, and hopefully nothing has changed. Thank you all for the passionate discussion on this topic. I think this is an area where we all believe we need to improve, and I really appreciate that shows. we will continue to get better in subsequent releases. It's an evolution, right? So we have what we have, but we're going to continue to try to do better. Thank you all. Sorry we've gone over quite a bit, and we'll regroup on Monday.
Later.
Everyone.
Thank you, guys.